Hallo Herbstlernende. Schön, dass ihr eingeschaltet habt. Sprechen wir nicht lang um den heißen Brei herum. Ich bin weiß. Ich bin so weiß, wenn ich vor die Tür gehe, dann sagt die Sonne, ach, Sonnenbrille. Geiler Witz, ich weiß. Die Sache ist die. Black Lives Matter ist nicht erst seit der letzten Woche entstanden, sondern existiert seit Jahren. Und auch ich bin viel zu spät wachgerüttelt worden. Aber jetzt möchte ich was ändern und dazu gehört, dass man einfach darüber redet. Und dazu gehört, dass man sich einfach über das Thema Rassismus mal ein paar Dinge klar macht. Dazu möchte ich heute einen kleinen, bescheidenen Beitrag leisten und gleichzeitig möchte ich ein bisschen euer Englisch schulen. Deswegen haue ich jetzt ein paar Definitionen auf Englisch raus. Enjoy! So what is racism really? We will talk about the term and we will talk about the different kinds of racism that exist in the world right now. However, I will not talk a lot about the history of racism because that would be a lot that I would have to tell. What is racism? People believe that they are better because of skin color, because of their cultural background. This may mean the country that they come from. This could mean their religion, their basic principles and beliefs, or just simply based on prejudice because they have not really met a lot of the people of other skin color or cultural background and simply don't know any better. This leads to another belief, that there are different races of people and that these people should not mix, that white people should be with white people and BIPOC people of color should be with other people of color. Those should stay apart from one another and not mix, because that would be bad in some way. Also, racism is defined as discriminating other people based on these prejudices that I just described to you, which means if you act on racist thoughts, if you say, well, this guy must be dirty because he is from another country that I don't know or I don't like, and I don't want this person to be next to me, then you surely are racist. Next question. Is racism always a white versus BIPOC people thing? Well, yes and no, because there are other instances where there is racism in the world. For example, in Africa, there are forms of racism where certain African tribes do not tolerate minor African tribes. There are forms of Asian racism stereotypes. For example, if you live in Japan, they have prejudices against white people. They do, and you would be a minority there. However, by far, the most influential form of racism is the racism of Western people against people of color. This has been going on for the last 500 to 900 years, and it influences our everyday lives all around the globe. So, while there are technically other forms of racism, they are nothing compared to the racism that white people have shaped, used, and abused. It is very important that we don't mix up racism and discrimination. You can discriminate somebody without being racist. So, what is discrimination? Well, discrimination means that you treat another person unfairly because of a specific characteristic like age, gender, race, religion, maybe just because of the clothes this person is wearing. However, it is an unfair treatment. An example for this would be, I can give somebody in my classroom extra work for behaving improperly or for not being on time. But I could also just give it to somebody because I don't like his or her nose. I could just say, oh, you're getting this because I don't like you. And that would be an unfair treatment. And that would be discrimination. So discrimination can be racist, but it is not the same as racism. Anybody can be unfair towards another person because of something. However, it's only racist discrimination if I do what I do based on prejudice, because I believe that you are something less than me. If I say that you are not as much a human being as I am, but something less important, something less worthy. So here are a few important facts about racism that everybody should know. First of all, racism is always systemic. That means that there is a larger system in place that must in some form tolerate racism. There must be space and time for racism to exist. Does in no way mean that our government in Germany is in favor of racism. No. It just means that they don't always have the means to imprison somebody just because he or she is racist. There is racism and there is freedom of speech, and both are very important. So you have to be constantly aware that some of it is okay and some of it is pure racism and should not be tolerated. So the thing about systemic racism is that the people who suffer from racism, who get the unfair treatment, are always the minority. They don't have the power. It's harder for them to fight back against racist treatment, and as such, often they don't. They simply don't. They just endure. They do nothing. They say, this will go away if I wait long enough. And this is not okay. Positive racism is if you say something that is racist, but it's not mean. For example, I could say that black people are great at playing basketball. This is nice, isn't it? But it's still racist. Because that may sound like a compliment, like a nice thing to say, but it will still be a problem for some people. Maybe a black person is a good basketball player. But what if he or she is not? What if he or she doesn't like basketball? Now, that person might start thinking about that and say, what is wrong with me? Am I not a real black person because I don't like basketball? Am I supposed to play basketball because I'm black? And that is some sort of pressure. It will pressure people into fitting the stereotype, into being something that they didn't want to be in the first place. And it puts them in a corner. Imagine everybody would say that you have to become a mother or father by the age of 16. Maybe you don't want that, but if everybody keeps telling you that you should, because that's who you are, you would start thinking too, wouldn't you? So that is pressure, and it's not a nice thing, even if it's meant as a kind gesture. Last but not least, there is something called internalized racism, and that describes the fact that if you are a person of color and you live in a predominantly white country, which means that most people in this country are white, and all the media that you have, like TV shows, movies, show white people being great at stuff, then you may start believing yourself that white people are better than you are. If you hear often enough that black people or people of color are more criminal, more cruel, and not as intelligent, you may start to believe maybe there's something to it. Maybe I am not as intelligent as white people. And that is also a problem and also an effect that racism can have. There is no scientific evidence to suggest that people of color are less intelligent in any way. There is no genetic thing that makes you more intelligent or less intelligent than white people. So this is something that we have to get rid of as soon as possible. So I hope these definitions will help you become aware of some of the racist problems that we still have in our society nowadays. Thank you for listening.